Hello, Ms. Garvey.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, sorry for the delay.
Oh, that's okay.
That's okay. So we're just going to get to it. So
Okay,
I'd like you to tell us your full name, your
sure,
profession, how long you've been in that profession, what position you're vying for, and your ballot number.
sure. My name is Megan Garvey. I am an attorney. I work as a public defender. I've worked as a public defender for the past 15 years. I am running for Municipal and Traffic Court, Division A, and my ballot number is 113.
Thank you very much. So I want to, and first of all, I'm Dawn Abear with Voters East of the Industrial Canal, and thank you for participating.
Thank
But
you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'd like to introduce you to Donna Glapion and Brandon Gilmore, who's with You're Gonna Feel Me Now podcast. So I'm going to let them have it right now. Here we go.
Hi, Ms. Garvey. I just have a few questions.
Hi.
If elected, how different are you from your opponent? And if elected, what plans do you have for your first 100 days on the bench?
I think I'm very different. I have been a public defender for the past 15 years here in New Orleans. I started my career after Katrina when I was trying to help people who had not been evacuated before the storm get out of jails and prisons around the state because they didn't have access to courts. Prior to being a public defender, I worked with people with mental health issues and formerly homeless people and children who were affected by HIV. During my career as a public defender, I have also done a lot of legislative advocacy. So I helped lead the charge to raise the age to have juveniles treated as juveniles and keep them in juvenile court, right, rather than putting them in adult prisons, and also led the charge to better fund public defense. And so the reason that I bring that up in the description of the difference between me and my opponent is that I believe that a judge is responsible for not just what happens on the bench, right, but also think that a judge should be a leader in the community and speak out against injustice and try to help improve the community for everybody. My first 100 days, we got to clean up the backlog. City Council has had 2 hearings asking about this. Right now we have 2 open cases in municipal court for every man, woman, and child in New Orleans. We have 1 in 7 people with a warrant out of municipal court, and Black people are 5 times more likely to get arrested on those warrants than white people. So there's definitely a lot of problems going on there. When City Council asked the court, including my opponent, to speak out on this, they were met with no plan, no answer, nothing of that nature. So I do have a plan to address that. I do believe that a judge can hold prosecutors accountable. 88% of these cases that I'm talking about in the backlog are more than 4 years old, which means legally they're past the time to be prosecuted, right? So a judge can hold the prosecutor, whether it be the city attorney, whether it be the district attorney, to their burden, right? And ask them to indicate whether or not they actually plan on going forward. Prosecutors have specific duties under the ethics code, and a judge can hold them to that and make sure that these cases get closed so that people do not have this kind of stuff hanging over their head in perpetuity. So that's one of my big that I will begin in my first 100 days, getting rid of that backlog so that people can get back to work and not having.
You're breaking up.
It's telling me my, oh yeah, it's telling me my internet connection is stable. Can you hear me?
You're going in and out.
Oh my God. Trying to move around.
That's a little better. It was.
Oh no. Can you call in? Wait.
I can hear.
Should I?
I can hear you. I
You can hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what I can do.
That's okay.
Okay.
Okay. And my next question is, Do you agree with adjusting traffic tickets fines for low-income residents?
Well, yeah. The Constitution says that you cannot assess fines and fees that people can't pay, first of all. So that's just basic, right? But beyond that, right, I think that what's important for a judge to do is to consider what are the priorities of the community and what's important, right? Right now we're at 25%, maybe more, unemployment. Schools and businesses are closed. I think it's important that we prioritize, like, what are we really doing with the court, right? Are we middle school hall monitors, or are we trying to keep the city safe and really deal with serious crime rather than, you know, using the court as a debt collection agency and using our police and our deputies to go chasing after people who don't have money, right? So yeah, I think that fines should be commensurate with people's ability to pay. And I think that there should be an effort to also take into consideration, how can we resolve these cases quickly so that they don't turn into this crazy backlog of warrants where people are scared to drive to work, right? Or scared to even be out because they don't know what kind of interaction they're going to have with the police. And also, right now, anytime somebody gets arrested, regardless of what it's for, right? Whether it's a traffic charge or murder charge, right? If they go to that jail right now, the COVID numbers are bad. It's not safe there. So do we really want to risk people's lives and their health for a traffic ticket? No. So absolutely. I absolutely think that things should be commensurate with people's ability to pay. The goal is to get people back on track, not keep disrupting them, disrupting their lives and disrupting our economy.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Ms. Garvey. I'm turning it over to Ms.
Those are easy questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so how you doing? Good evening.
I'm good. Nice to see you.
Same here. First question, when it comes to preventing deadly force by police, do you agree or disagree that law enforcement agencies should be federally regulated versus allowing states so much discretion when it specifically comes to statutes regarding stand your ground and no-knock warrants laws?
Well, I feel like that's a trick question because look who's in charge of our federal government right now, right? Can you ask me like before November, after November? No, I mean, I think it's a problem, definitely. As far as stand your ground and no-knock warrants, yeah, I think those are definitely issues. You know, I know that there was a resolution recently in the city council, really in honor of Breonna Taylor about the no-knock warrant issue. I definitely think that that is something that the court should look at. And it should be, if they ever do a no-knock warrant, it should never be for a drug case, right? It should never be for anything where there's not a violent crime. I will say, I don't think that there's anything that would ever come into municipal court that would merit a no-knock warrant, right? But yeah, I think that they have created a lot of dangerous situations. I think that our police are overly militarized. I think that the attitude has shifted with law enforcement from wanting to protect people to police being afraid of the very people that they're supposed to protect. So yeah, I definitely think that those things should be regulated. As to stand your ground, yeah, I mean, honestly, like those things are mostly sorted out through case law, but yes, I definitely think that those things should be regulated. I definitely think that there should be a very clear evaluation or audit, if you will, of how do these things play out along racial lines? How do they play out along ethnicity lines, gender lines? So yes, I do think that those things should be regulated. But you know what I really think, if I can just add something in about that, is qualified immunity. I think that's a real issue, right? I actually helped organize a presentation, and we were so close, at the legislature where people testified, and I think they're bringing it back again in October, just something to watch, about qualified immunity, right? Qualified immunity says basically that you can't sue the police, even when they kill somebody or hurt somebody, right? And so it makes it next to impossible for people to properly regulate that behavior. My glasses are doing a weird glare thing, sorry. And so I definitely think that that's really important. We need to get this under control.
Okay, and I have one final question. Specifically, what have you done in the last year as a contribution to the city's effort for the advancement of this community? What's your community service been in the past year?
Well, I serve as a public defender, so I represent people who are in need to defend their constitutional rights. But beyond that, I have also advocated at the legislature to provide more funding for public defense so that poor people can have the same kind of lawyers that anybody else can afford, right? I was actually quite successful in securing a $7 million emergency appropriation from the state for public defense. I also testified and advocated for a parity statute, which means that in the budget, that the city, any amount that they give the prosecutor's office, they have to give the same amount to the public defender's office. And that actually sets us way above any other jurisdiction. So I'm really proud of our city council for doing that. I also advocated for some other measures, which unfortunately are sort of stalled right now, but a measure where police would not do a custodial arrest, meaning like actually put somebody in handcuffs, right, and take them to jail for minor crimes, unless they had some reason to believe that that person was a danger to the community, or that that person made it clear that they had no intention of coming back to court. And if they did decide to do a custodial arrest, they needed to write it down. Now, I thought that that was an important measure for two reasons. Well, several reasons actually, but one, because of the COVID issue, we don't want people cycling in and out of the jail because that puts all of our community at risk from their exposure. But also because in documenting the reasons that a police officer chooses to arrest somebody, we're creating data, right? And I felt that the police, if they were really, if NOPD was really honest about wanting to make improvements and wanting to look at how are people treated differently in our community based on their race, by generating that data and evaluating it, they could look at the decisions that they were making, right? And start to form better policies. And finally, just jail is for people that are violent and dangerous, not for people who aren't. That is still sort of in the hopper. I know I'm going on and on, but there's also a measure to try to create a database of police officers who have been in trouble with the law or had complaints against them. By creating that database, what you can do is you can prevent the community from having people rehired in the capacity of, a private security detail, right? And then continuing to perpetrate that same kind of unsafe or violent behavior. Right now, we're sort of at the mercy of who hires people and vets them. So those are just a few of the things that I have done in the past year that I think are demonstrate my efforts to try to make this community a safer place for everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
I do have a question. I have a
Sure.
You can't see me, but I have a question.
Okay.
Why for traffic court and not criminal court?
Wait, what is the traffic court?
I said, why are you running for traffic court and not criminal court?
Because, so it's not just traffic court. So, so it's traffic and municipal. Okay. So it's not just traffic charges, right? A lot of the charges that people that come through are things like this charge called obstruction of public passage, or public drunk, or disturbing the peace, things like that, right? And so those charges are very similar to the old vagrancy charges that the Supreme Court has said are unconstitutional. Those charges are actually born out of our very dark history. They came about right after the 13th Amendment was passed. And they were meant to make it easier for sheriffs to do convict policing of Black people. And so part of the reason why I'm running for this court is because of that, the backlog that I told you about, but also because I think that a lot of what goes on there is truly based in racism, whether it's intentional by the judges or not, but just that system that exists there. And because I think that that court creates a lot more problems than it solves. So it's not just traffic court.
Okay.
So that's why I'm running for that court. And because I think that there's a lot of problems that I think I can actually make a big difference, even just being one judge on that bench.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for staying and participating in the forum. So I wish